So I'm going to begin, Jake, just by asking what it was that initially attracted you to getting involved in the right stuff.
I'd say the script for sure. The script is pretty much Mark Lafferty's script was the thing I think that hooked all of us first. I mean, obviously it was exciting to be on Nat Geo. Appian Way provides kind of a guarantee of a certain pedigree, having DiCaprio on as a producer and some of the other creative entities involved. But, it really always comes down to the script. And this is a script that all my friends are actors that were kind of auditioning around that time last year were talking about, asking if I'd read it yet, asking, if I was reading for it. And I was still contracted to my previous show, so I wasn't able to audition for it. So once that show was officially over, I got sent the script. Going into reading it with already this kind of buzz about it. So I read it. I thought it was great. I was actually reading for a different character when I first read it. But just the way that Lafferty, balanced these 14 regular characters spanning from the astronauts and their wives and the families to, Bob Gilruth and Chris Kraft and Lunny over at the inception of the space program and NASA. It's a lot of spinning plates, and to do it in such a way that felt fresh, unique, and gave you an insight not just to the era, but kind of who these people were as people and the drama inside their lives outside of, Mercury and the space program, I thought was just, a Herculean effort that he executed really well. So I'd say the script. The script was the first thing that hooked all of us. I could
You mentioned that obviously this is a Nat Geo production, but obviously since then it's now become a big part of Disney Plus. So I was wondering how cool that is to know that this is now available on such a huge platform and reaching millions of people's households.
It's great. I think I subscribed to Disney Plus like half the world or whatever it is back when it came out, last November. And so it would have been right around the time we were finishing up The Right Stuff. And, I knew that Nat Geo was part of Disney, but I think originally it was going to air on Nat Geo TV, which is great. They have also this season Barskins, and they've got Genius and Hot Zone and some other good shows. So that was already exciting. But having just kind of been introduced as a fan and a viewer myself to Disney Plus, that apparatus, having Marvel and all the Star Wars I could ever hope to watch, and everything else that comes with Disney Plus. Obviously that announcement when we heard it was also really exciting to be part of that family, and just know that when I at the time, before I knew about a global pandemic, was imagining coming home for Thanksgiving and kind of being there with my family, that this show that I'm a part of might be available to stream as a family, kind of across generational lines with the Mercury program. My parents who actually remember those events, and like me and my sister who, would be kind of watching them play out for the first time. Just knowing that there could be other families out there in America and across the world that get that opportunity was really, really rad. We were really happy about it.
Yeah, I'm still working my way through The Simpsons on Disney Plus at the moment. I just thought,
Beginning
of lockdown, I thought there's like 31 seasons. If I'm ever going to do it, now's the time.
My God, it's almost as old as I am. That's insane.
I was wondering about how much information there was about Alan Shepard and the kind of pressure in playing a real life person that leaves behind a kind of family and people that are going to watch this. I just wondered if you just push that to one side, because I guess if you concern yourself too much with how people who knew Alan might be perceiving this portrayal, then I guess it could be a bit overwhelming.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You had that pressure with this story, in addition to Scott Glenn's performance in the movie. So both of those things can kind of sit on your shoulder and drive you crazy if you worry about them too much. But, it does add a little bit of, I don't know if pressure is the right word. It's more like responsibility. In a lot of ways it can be intimidating, but at the same time, it definitely gives you a direction that kind of runs a parallel line with the script. So the script builds a framework of what the character version in this story of this person is going to be. And then you just have this wealth of research to do and front load the process with immersing yourself in that, to just kind of arm yourself with all the knowledge of the time, the era, the man, the myth in this case, before you go onto the set for the first time. It's not the first time I've played somebody that is a real person. I did in American Sniper. I played Ryan Jobe, who's a Navy SEAL, and that came with a lot of pressure. I mean, there's a lot of parallels just with playing a real person in any project. He's somebody that was, would leave his family and go into harm's way for a living. Alan is that too. But I think one of the things that was the most enjoyable about this specifically was just getting to immerse yourself in the time. I mean, these people were as famous as the Beatles kind of overnight. So there was no shortage of information and perspectives to read about not just the Mercury program, but the space race in America altogether. And as a cast, we would get together. We had kind of an email chain that Patrick Adams set up before we started production, where we could all kind of pool our resources. I took a road trip from LA to Florida where we were shooting, which is like, some 3,000 miles or something. It took like 5 days. And on that road trip, listened to the audiobook of The Right Stuff. So I was consuming it that way, reading Shepard's biography, which is a great book called Light This Candle by Neil Thompson. Out of the 7 Mercury astronauts, I think it's the only book that he didn't write, or it's the only book that the astronaut didn't write themselves, like an autobiography. Shepard went his whole life without writing an autobiography, which speaks a lot to the kind of guy he was. He really valued his privacy. He was very uncomfortable with a lot of aspects of all of a sudden being a global phenomenon. So because he didn't have this curated autobiography about him, his biography ended up being, one of the books and one of the pieces of research that I know a lot of the other actors playing a lot of the other astronauts would also read, because it gave such an unfettered look at, this timeline. So, all of those things went into it. And then, when you get closer to closing in on day one, it just becomes about kind of the cosmetics, like how does he talk? How does he hold himself? He comes from a military family. I don't have any military in my immediate family. That trickles down through the chain of command and how you treat authority and how you hold yourself and assert yourself, and a deliberate nature of speaking and mannerisms and all that stuff. You kind of just pool in there too, before just having to kind of throw it all away and trusting yourself when you get to set, because at the end of the day, you are servicing the script first and foremost, and that's always going to be a team effort.
Yeah, I love the character. There's almost something quite stoic about him. He reminded me a bit of Don Draper from Mad Men in some ways.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. But I was wondering, so because what these people did, I'm in awe of the courage and the diligence and everything of these men. But would you, if you were presented the chance tomorrow to go up into space, not as an astronaut, but as a guest on an astronaut's kind of ship, would you do it, or would you find that a bit scary?
I definitely find it a bit scary. Whether or not I do it or not, anyways, I don't know. It depends who's asking. If Elon Musk is asking, maybe. Richard Branson, maybe. If Alan Shepard from 1961 wanted to know if I could ride in the capsule with him, absolutely not. The thing looked like it ran off of a potato battery. Yeah, it'd be fun. It's exciting. I mean, I think having the first manned SpaceX launch was March of this year. Having that, stream live to your phone if you wanted to, with GoPros and cameras mounted in the cockpit, so you could see the astronauts during the launch, kind of bookending that experience this year with what our show, demonstrates with the Mercury program, is just kind of insane bandwidth of where it started and where it is today. And sure, where it is today gets me closer to saying yes.
Yeah. Because a lot of kids when they're sort of growing up, when they were asked what they want to be when they're older, astronaut was a kind of bit of a cliched answer, but a lot of kids did want to grow up and be astronauts. What was your kind of dream profession when you were a kid?
Oh, I oscillated between astronaut, fireman, spy, FBI agent. I mean, it was kind of all over the aptitude map before I landed on actor.
Yeah, but now you're an actor. You can be all of those things as an actor.
You're not wrong. And I think somebody told me whenever you take those aptitude tests in grade school, as I kind of oscillated between like, no, I should probably be an international spy, or no, I'll be an astronaut. Like, somebody at some point said that those jobs aren't always as fun as they seem in the movies, and that might have been a clue.
Yeah. So I was wondering too about, because I interviewed Patrick earlier this week, and I'm a huge fan of his. He's a brilliant actor. I just wondered, because you two obviously share so many scenes together in this series.
Yeah.
What was he like to collaborate with on this project?
Oh man, you really can't ask for a better acting partner than Patrick Adams. That goes for really our whole cast. We lucked out, and they're all actors that really love the process, and we're excited to get to work and work hard on it. But Patrick is, like you said, the actor that I spent the most time with. He was great. I mean, we have a few mutual friends in LA, but I had never met him until we started working on this project. He immediately, I think our mutual friend put us in touch the second the second it was announced that I was cast. And so we set up going to lunch here in LA before either of us were in Florida. And just kind of talked about the book. We came for two characters that are so opposite ends of the spectrums. I think our approach, we're also really in line with how different the characters were. Like, he had read this book when he was a kid. His dad's a journalist. He absolutely is obsessed with the space program. And I think, in fact, currently is working on getting his pilot's license, So this was like already in Patrick's blood. And for me, it was all new information. Like, I had known about John Glenn, but the other Mercury astronauts, not so much. So he kind of right out of the gate helped point me in the right direction with the things that he thought I should read, and kind of in a lot of ways, was the one being like, "You're playing Alan Shepard. Do you know how fucking cool that is?" And I was like, "I think so. Maybe not as much as you." So with the research, he was helpful. And then when we got to Florida, he was just somebody that I could always depend on and lean on to kind of navigate all of our work together. You saw episodes 1 through 5, is that right?
I've seen the first 3 episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of episodes in, there's a big scene between Shepard and Glenn that took an entire day to film. I think it's 12 pages long, and it's really the two of us going back and forth. And he and I got to extra credit, offset, rehearse that scene just until it was locked in and rock solid. And that's, testament to Patrick really just loving the process that much. He's great, man. He's so good in the show. He's awesome.
Yeah, because I asked him the same question. He didn't say the same thing now, JD. he was very kind about you too when I asked him. Yeah, tell
him to stick to the agreed talking points we had about each other.
But I loved. I really enjoyed what I've seen so far. I take my time with TV series. I'm not a binge watcher, which is why I watch it quite slowly. But I really enjoyed this world and these characters. And it's got a real slickness to the operation. I think the writing is so good. So I'd love to see more of this. Obviously, there's a time. There's only so much further we can go because it's based on real events. But would you be interested in pursuing this further and seeing where else these characters could go?
Absolutely. I think that's the plan. I mean, it always going to depend on a lot of things that are out of our control, how it's received, how many people watch it, all that stuff that goes into any television series. But the plan, the loose framework of where it would go, follows the Mercury astronauts through the Mercury program, but then would, in effect, follow Gemini and follow Apollo, and there's a lot of crossover between the Mercury astronauts and those programs. And then there's an influx of new astronauts, obviously with Apollo, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins for Apollo 11. But, Shepard went to the moon in Apollo 14, hit a golf ball off the moon. He was grounded during Gemini and was working from mission control because of his inner ear problems. I think the goal, if this was to be, a long running series, would be to, finish everybody's Mercury flight, Glenn's orbital flight, move into Gemini, bring in new characters, kind of expand the canvas in that way, and carry over the astronauts from seasons 1 and 2 from Mercury that were still an active part of the space program, like Chris Kraft, Deke Slayton, Shepard, and then, make way for incoming astronauts that join the program after Mercury.
So as an actor, how different a decision and an approach do you take when signing up to a TV series than to a film? Because if you look at, I was talking to Patrick the other day, he was on Suits for about a decade. So when you sign up to a TV series, because I guess with a movie, maybe a month, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, you might be away from home, you might be doing this. But when you sign up to a TV series, do you think that far ahead? Do you think to yourself, this could be something I'm working on for a decade? And does that change the way you approach, you make your decision?
Yeah, in a couple of ways. I mean, it changes your approach to the decision-making process. You have to say, is this an idea? Is this a world? Is this a group of people that I would love to work with potentially for, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 10 years? I mean, that you can only think about that so much because how long a series runs is so far out of your control as an actor. But whenever you do have the agency over those factors about whether or not you're going to do it or not, it's important to try your best to gauge if this is something you love enough to kind of stay married to it for a long time. And then as an actor, this has a pretty famous IP. The book rounds out at the end of Mercury, but as I was saying before, like Jennifer Davison from Appian Way and all the creative entities involved did project, like, here's how we see this series going, meaning The Right Stuff is kind of unique in that it's not technically an anthology, but your involvement with the show will reflect your astronauts' involvement with the space program. Like, it's not going to all of a sudden follow John Glenn into being a senator, for example. If John Glenn leaves NASA, he'll have less involvement as a character in the, forthcoming seasons than he did maybe in the first 2. Same with Shepard, same with all the other astronauts. That makes it a little bit easier to, have your involvement be malleable. But isn't, and a show like The Right Stuff, also, when you are based on a book that's been adapted to a movie, you have a vague idea of a beginning and an end, whereas something like Suits, something like other shows I've worked on, if it's fiction, it is just kind of the writers are cracking the season as you shoot it, so there's things you find out about your character in episode 10 that you didn't know about in episode 4, so you have to it's this like kind of never-ending period of growth and figuring out who the person is as it unfolds in front of you. Where a film, you have a pretty finite beginning, middle, and end. You see the arc of a character from start to finish, and you can kind of reverse engineer that where you need to. Where a fictional series that can run 20 episodes, 5 seasons, you're constantly kind of on your feet figuring out, well, okay, they're going this way or they're going that way. So that's creatively different. It can be a challenge, but again, Right Stuff kind of falls somewhere in between because, 8-episode season based on a book, based on historical events that we all know about. So you do kind of have a vague beginning, middle, and end, even though the show can take creative routes to get there.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir. I'm actually going to go and watch another episode now, I think.
Check it out.
Yeah. But no, fingers crossed it gets received well and there's more and more series, because I just felt really, there's just something about living in that world just for an hour, that I just felt really, I felt really comforting. I found good, comforting telly. I really enjoyed it. So best of luck with it all. And maybe if there is a season 2, we'll do an interview like this in person by that point. Who knows?
God, I hope so. I'm so glad you like the show, man. Thanks very much. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys.
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey, you guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.